So I'm just going to scroll this down, and if I can ask everyone to read it, and then someone just tell me when you've got to the end of that section, and I'll scroll it up again.
Okay, I'm at the end.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, back to
Janet.
Is that the end? I think. Yeah.
Yes. We didn't see the very last bit of it.
Just this bit. What will happen to my data?
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry, I thought you were changing the screen. Sorry. Oh, and it still says draft on it. That's my fault.
Okay. Is everyone happy with that page?
Yes.
Okay. Right. I'm just going to share the other one. We'll email these to you as well. It was partly that the process has taken a little bit of time to get organised. So these have only been approved in this form for the university this morning. So we'll send them over in their final state so you can see them as well. Absolutely no problem. And this is just a consent form. So again, the same contact details, and I'll read this through. So I confirm I've read the information sheet March 22 for the study, and I've had the opportunity to consider the information and ask questions or clarify points if required. I understand that my participation is voluntary and I'm free to withdraw at any time without giving any reason. I agree to recording and the use of anonymised quotes in research reports for British Council, a University Grants Commission, and in publications. I agree to take part in the study. I agree that I may be contacted post the focus group to seek clarification on a specific point. I understand that agreeing to be contacted does not oblige me to participate in any further studies. So I know, Namali, you mentioned about further information being sent over, which would be absolutely fantastic, and that would fall in there. And then if you wish to take part, please confirm this in the chat. Now, does anyone have any questions about any of the information before we sign this off? No? Okay. So can I please ask all of you to go into the chat and just write your name saying that you would agree to be part of the focus group. And then that's all the administration that's completed.
And Namali's already done it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, ladies, the reason why I'm off the video is because there's a power cut on here. So I'm using my other connection and it's not too great. So that's why I just wanted to keep it on the audio, but hopefully next time we'll have better luck and, you know.
Oh, Namali, how often are your power cuts at the minute? I understand it's really quite bad at times.
Yes, very, because every day we have it during the day and also in the nighttime. Yeah.
Oh no, that's not good.
Yeah. Yes, I know. We're getting used to it. Let me put it that way.
And does it go off for a long time during the day when it's off? Is
it about 1.5 hours or 2 hours?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and then yeah. But you know, like I anticipated this, so I charged up my other laptop and I'm using that so that the battery will last. Yeah.
And Namali, are there power cuts happening about the same time every day?
No, they are rolling power cuts. So, you know, and you're taken by surprise.
Yeah, so I was just trying to think, you know, if we could arrange some of these meetings at different times, if that would have helped. But obviously, if you don't know when the power cuts are going to be, it's not necessarily going to help.
Yeah, okay, let me put it this way. I noticed that they don't go off early in the morning, but that's not a possibility because it's, you know, early. I mean, it's just soon after midnight for you guys. So let's work this way and let's see. I mean, you know, we have a few more meetings to do. So hopefully this might improve. Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Good stuff.
Okay. And
Okay.
and as with everything, it's recorded, so people can view it back. Anyone that wasn't able to attend, we appreciate that. It's challenging times for everyone in very different ways at the moment, and you know, things have moved on from when we had conversations last summer, but we are still going through some of the complications of the pandemic.
Yes.
Right, what I will do is I am going to let me just move this over here. I'm going to quickly share a presentation. There we go. Now, can everyone see that cover sheet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Now, can everyone
yes.
see?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Can.
perfect. So, as I mentioned, we're just going to quickly run through a little bit of information, but the majority of this is going to be led by Julie and Jenny and be a fairly open discussion session. We anticipate that will take to around about 11 o'clock, 3:30 your time, and then we'll have half an hour to talk about some best practice and answer any questions, additional questions that you may have. So it's lovely to have you all here today. Now, oh, hang on. There we go. Right. So for some people, it's a reintroduction. Julia and I have been working with our Sri Lankan partners since 2019 now, and so we're delighted to be continuing on this project, looking at industry placements. So Julia is the Dean of School of Health and Life Sciences, with a background in forensic science, but with a specific focus on internationalization and a real special interest in Sri Lanka, and she's been working over there with partners for many years. Jenny is joining us, and she's new to the team this time round. She's a lecturer in events in business and creative industries. Forgive me if I got this wrong, Jenny, but she is a specialist in working with industry and partnerships, and has completed a doctorate in that field. So looking at how we integrate industry activity more with student experience and student study. So she's absolutely a fantastic person to have joined us on this session. People who aren't with us today, but are also involved in the project, are Daniel and Nina, who add different perspectives from different areas of the university, and also have been working with Sri Lanka for the last 3 years.
Janet, can I just, you won't know either, Nina has a new job. She does. No, she did text me from her holiday in the Canaries to tell me she's got a new job, but I couldn't remember exactly what her title was. I think it's just around student experience, isn't it? It is. Student experience and academic practice, is it, Jenny? Seat? Maybe enhancement, maybe. Can't remember. Yeah. Oh, but she has a new role, but her background is in quality assurance, and she's now working more directly in student experience. But she's on holiday this week. She's overseas. Now that our borders have opened up, people are taking the opportunity for that to happen. We then have a project researcher. Her name is Julie, and she'll be joining for some of the sessions. And she has a background again in understanding kind of how communities work together and how students are involved in various areas that have been really important to this project. The CPD Centre, you'll see Ellie on the screen in the background, they're offering project support, and I've now moved roles. So I previously did work for the university and have been involved in this project for the last 3 years. I now work for an organisation called Entrepreneurial Scotland, who focus specifically on student internships and then leadership training for Scotland as a nation. And so actually I'm delighted to be able to continue to work on this project, because what we do actually directly correlates with the kind of work that we're doing with Sri Lanka just now. And we can talk a little bit more about what we do specifically individually as we go along. Talking about the project. So the project aims are to work with higher education,
other national organisations, including the UGC, but also NAITA and some industry bodies, to explore industry engagement and placement activity that's already occurring in Sri Lanka, to identify and share some of the areas of best practice that might be happening, for example, with the University of Colombo, but maybe other universities haven't really kind of got their heads around how to help to embed this in student learning. We want to share some insights from our experiences in the UK, both good and probably bad, and certainly some of the challenges that we face when we're dealing with student integration into industry activity. And then the latter part of the project, when we deliver some training later in the summer, is going to be around supporting on any specific development needs that have come through from these sessions, and again talk about some of the challenges that we focused and found and how we've dealt with those going forward over the last kind of 10 to 20 years of working with industry within the UK. So the journey of the project, there was a period of desk research looking at policy that is occurring, some academic papers and doing some situational analysis. We're now doing exploration sessions. We'll go on to do training and support, and there will be a final report and recommendations. The idea is that this leads on to a bigger piece of work, but obviously with everything that's currently happening in Sri Lanka and Europe as well being quite unstable at the moment, we don't know what will happen. So we'll try and get as much as possible into these sessions to be as useful as possible for yourselves. Right now, we are here, we're just starting the exploration sessions. And as I mentioned, we'll be doing these with different bodies separately. So University of Colombo, you are on your own. Tomorrow we're speaking to NAITA. Next week we have UGC, another couple of groups of universities as well. And then we're hoping to be able to speak to some students pending some confirmations. So now we'll move on to the main body of the activity, and I'm going to stop the presentation. Julie and Jenny are going to lead on some questions that will explore employability with the graduates and the students themselves, how you go about working with employers, how work experience is provided for students or integrated into the studies that they're doing, how industry informs program design. And I know, Namali, you wanted to talk specifically about each area of the university, and I think that would be quite useful actually. And then finally, how you involve students in the decision making to understand their outcomes for how they're going to go and get a job finally. So I'll stop sharing just now. And can I ask, does anyone have a question at this point? Or will I hand over to Julie to start the question session?
That's fine. I do have questions, but let's get on with this because, you know, and then I mean, hopefully we'll be able to have another session, you know, after we send out details about the programs that volunteer to take part. Okay.
Absolutely, Namali. This is for us, the gathering the information part to inform. So, yeah. I suppose if you can recall when we came out to Sri Lanka the first time, we had a few sessions where we met staff, we met students, we gathered information, and then we put some different workshops on towards the end of the week. So this is the start of the week. So we're gathering our information at the minute. So I'm going to kick off with the first series of questions, and then I'll hand over to Jenny for her to pick up some questions as well. So I suppose the first question for yourselves as a group is, and it would be useful to understand different areas and understand different programs, but what do you think is the current view on the level of employability for Sri Lankan graduates? So do you think that the level of employability for Sri Lankan graduates is good? I mean, it's very difficult at the moment with the way that the country is, but where is Sri Lanka in terms of the level of employability? So if I look at my school, we have a variation of employability for students going into graduate jobs. And it ranges from some that walk straight into a job to some that maybe take a while to get a graduate job. So what do you think your current views are on the employability of your graduates?
I think it mirrored what you said. By the way, there is the director of the University of Colombo School of Computing, Professor Hevagamage, KP Hevagamage. Now he is in a industry. I mean, in a degree programs where they just walk straight into jobs. So, Professor Hevagamage, would you be able to say something about the employability of the IT graduates first of all?
with regard to the employability of the IT graduates in Sri Lanka, is currently is more than 90% for all the universities. Even in the School of Computing at the University of Colombo, employability rate for the internal graduates is almost 100%. Simply because of it's a high demand for the graduates in the computing or IT section. However, on the other hand, there are students from the other disciplines can also now do some sort of supplementary type of courses, and then they can do not like in a software engineering level jobs, but some jobs which are supporting jobs, assistant jobs for the software engineering, they can do it. So that is the status with respect to the employability rate in the graduates at in the field of IT or computing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Janet's asked in the chat, so please do feel free to answer in the chat. If you don't want to talk or you're struggling for power, please do feel that you can make comment in the chat whilst we're talking as well. So in terms of skills, now this is not skills associated with the program, these are generic skills. So what skills do you think graduates need to be successful in the job market? So we know that they will have program specific skills, but what other skills do you think that the graduates need to be successful in the job market? So in the UK, we have what we call our graduate attribute skills. So these are skills that students would need, that we would expect them to be confident, we would expect them to be able to work in teams, that we would expect them to be able to dress appropriately when they're going into their employers and going for interviews, that we would expect them to have done their background homework on the company that they're going for interview. So we have a whole series of graduate attribute skills that we talk about, and they form part of a student's curriculum. So what sort of skills do you think students need in Sri Lanka to be able to gain employment?
Right now, Julie, I would say that they need the skills to be able to adapt to the unexpected.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I see we've got communication is one of the key skills. Absolutely, communication is key. So yeah, and being adaptable. Yeah, adaptability is a really good one. Yeah. Any others that you can think of that you think your students need?
I was just going to jump in, Julie. Sorry.
No, please do.
When I was doing research in this area, it kind of ties in with what you were saying with adaptability, but I think resilience is also another one that's in the UK really important, and I'm sure that's something that's the same everywhere.
Yes, it's a worldwide thing, resilient, right? Particularly, after this COVID-19, nobody expected this, but people had to learn. Anyway, okay. So by the way, there's we have representation from the law school. The Angani, she's from Faculty of Law, and there's Chamini, who is from the Faculty of Technology, and of course Rupika represents IT. So would you please, you guys, why don't you go ahead and give your views on employability from what would the lawyers be like?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, madam. Yes, when we are considering about the employability rate of law graduates, I can say it's more than 95%, because they are targeting not only a academic degree, and they are targeting a profession as well. So therefore, at present, it's more than 95%. Basically, actually, once they have completed their degree, sometimes it's very difficult to engage with the profession during the period of 1 year. But of course, after 1 year, they will adapt to this environment, and like they can develop their professional journey within a very short period of time. So that the skill they are gaining from the faculty, and also once they have completed this 4 years degree, they have to complete the exam that is called the bar exam. So once they have completed that, of course, they can, if they want, they can engage with the profession by themselves. So if they want, they can engage with certain corporate sectors, and even with the government as legal officers, and with NGOs, and like ample of opportunities are there. So currently, I think the LLB degree program is high demanding due to this employability rate.
They're really good employability rates, so it's good to see. And when you talk about your employability rates, in the UK, we have an independent survey looking at our graduate employability. Is there anything in Sri Lanka so that you would know where your students are getting jobs? So we don't gather the data, but I know that 96.5% of my nursing students get, or 98.5% of my nursing students get a job within the first 6 months of graduating. That data is collected nationally. Is there anything in Sri Lanka that it's collated in that way, or is this just yourselves understanding your student body and know who's got jobs and where they've got jobs?
Oh no, there is. It's not done by an independent group, but there is a UGC conducted survey, right? And our faculties, we also conduct our own employability survey. Professor Hevagamage, you, I think, have more information on this. Perhaps you could comment on that, please. Okay, maybe he's dropped off, but anyway, I think I've given you the answer, right? I mean,
that's yes, actually,
no, yes.
yes, I would like to support our professor's answer. In our faculty also, we are conducting that kind of employability surveys. I mean that annually we are conducting this survey to measure what kind of employability rate is existing. Actually, as you correctly pointed out, like we can't say every year it's achieving the same the rate, but if we are taking a general understanding, we can say it's more than 95%. So annually we are conducting this employability surveys.
And can I ask, are they of that 95%, is that 95% that would be going into jobs that are related to the fields? They're going into legal jobs, for example, or is it just that you know that they are working? Because we have that in the UK as well, that they might be going into a role, we know that they're in employment, but it could take them 2 or 3 years to get a job in their field. So actually they're coming up in the survey as being employed, but they maybe are working in a full-time role at entry level rather than graduate level. Do you get that level of detail?
Yes, actually, that's an interesting question. Because some students, I mean that is the new trend. Certain law students, they don't like to engage in legal field, even though they have completed the LLB degree. They don't like to engage in legal field. Let's say, for example, some of them, they are already engaged with the civil service, or some of them they are joining with the private sector as human resource managers, because like when we are looking at the syllabus or the content of our degree, it covers many areas and many aspects. So then apart from this core syllabus, they can engage with certain core curricular areas as well. So with that skill, actually some of the students, they are willingly joined with other fields, but most of the students, we can say nearly more than 8% of the students, they are doing their jobs or their profession with the legal field.
Good stuff. That's really interesting. Thank you. And for computing students, where are they going to work, for private or public companies?
Yes, most of the time they are engaging in the field of actually private, not public, because I think based on the salary and other remunerations and other facilities, and also they are looking at the freedom as well, because when they are engaging with the profession by themselves, so they themselves can handle and they can develop their own the professional and the career in future. So therefore, in my experience, the many students in our faculty, they are engaging in the field of private, actually, not the public.
Okay, Namalis, would you say that's the same across the institution? Do we know that most are going to work in public companies?
No, I would say, now I'm from the Faculty of Science. I would say for my own program, which is the degree on business and environment, they overwhelmingly end up going to private sector, because that's what the degree is actually training them to. I don't want them to go and work in the state sector unless they really, really want to, you know. So I would say that. And there is Professor Chamini, would you say about your technology students? By the way, the Faculty of Technology is very new, right? So they probably have, do you have even a single graduating batch? Do you have one?
Yes, actually, no, madam. Now, actually, we started in year 2018, and now we have 4 batches in the faculty, and no batch has been passed out yet. And our first batch now has completed the industrial training. So that's our current situation, and there are 4 batches in the faculty. So nobody has passed out actually.
Okay, right. Thank you. And Rupika, Professor Heva Gamage has gone silent.
I can reply. Sorry, because there are some issue with my device. If I answer the question, employability is a kind of a requirement by every faculty. They have to calculate with respect to their degree program. The main reason, employability rate indicates the acceptance of their graduates in the society. So it's a part of a curriculum development. Faculty should do it because if the employability rate is in a low, they really need, it's a requirement of the faculty to consider that thing very seriously, obtain the feedback from the possible external stakeholders who are providing the job opportunities for the students, and improve their curriculum in order to improve the employability rate in the coming years, because this is not a problem for some faculties, as you see here, but in other faculties this has become a big social issue in Sri Lanka, especially in the public universities. Some faculties, especially the faculties of the arts and the other faculties, we can find the details later. Employability rate is around 30%. So 30% is in a very critical situation. And we have some sort of a guideline for people to find out the calculate the employability rate. Usually our common practice is at the time of a graduation ceremony, we collect the details and compare it, and they usually get their results. They get a job opportunity. Sometimes it's 6 months or 1 year, and that time lag is good enough. We think about they can find a job. So it's a requirement of a faculty to address this. This is a UGC policy, and even in the quality assurance process, this has been recognized. Professor Nirmali can explain, and it's a responsibility, especially in the public universities. The education is free. Therefore, we need to create an environment to maximize the use of the public funds. So therefore, it must be addressed from the beginning to the end, and it's a part of the process.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move us on slightly now and just ask, how do you think industry perceives your students? Do they think that they are, what we would say in the UK, hitting the ground running, so that they have all of the skills ready to jump into employment, or do you think they are viewed that industry still needs to do some training with them once they are employed?
If I may jump in there, that's exactly why I wanted to have this project, take off, because there is a full-time industrial training and industrial research project in the degree I coordinate. And that industrial training and industrial research project, they do full-time with a private sector company in Sri Lanka, right? And that's designed to train them for the world of work, Julie, right? Mm-hmm. By the time they leave, that the private sector employers know what these students are capable of, right? Okay, yeah. So, but please, the others, go ahead.
Can I just jump in and ask very quickly, with regards to this industrial training, it sounds really interesting. How long are your students out working in industry? What length is the placement, so to speak?
The industrial research project goes on for the entire academic year, right? Which is like 15 into 2, right? 15 weeks into 2. The industrial training, by the way, also was meant to be that, but COVID-19 put a stop to many, companies didn't want outsiders coming and sitting inside their offices. But of course, now we have a fairly high coverage of our vaccine rates. So now there's no issue, right? Everybody seems to have got COVID and either recovered from it or is having COVID, right? So nobody's kind of dying seriously, right? So anyway, now that's changed. But I had to tell you that the industrial training was also meant to be that. But let's say it could go on for maximum of, say, 20 weeks. But by that time, they're already working with the company, trying to solve a problem of the company related to their degree, okay? Please, Professor Hevagamage, your students also have a very interesting internship.
So the internship is project linked. So they're linked to a specific project that they're trying to work through with the company as part of their industrial placement. Is that correct?
Yes, Julie, all that stuff we'll put into a detailed report from every.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you obviously are working together to enhance the student employability skills, which is great to hear if you've got the industrial placements. But as we've said, and you've said, it doesn't always necessarily work out when you've got your creative arts students that might have a really low employability. And I think we could safely say the same happens in the UK. There's areas and pockets where we don't get that level of employability that we would want to see. So you've mentioned in the chat that NAITA is responsible for the university internships, and they help you place the students. Is that correct?
That's only for the Faculty of Technology. I'm from the Faculty of Science.
Yeah.
Right?
So how do your students get internships, Nimali?
Mine. Okay. That's another reason why I wanted this. I basically use my contacts in industry. Remember, I'm dealing with a low number of students. This is a 4-year honors degree. So I now have like a maximum of 22 students because this degree has suddenly sort of become high demand, right? I'm not sure why. Anyway, now I personally talk to and phone and hassle, if I may say so, all my industry contacts to giving internships, or I want to call it industry placement, to my students. Sure. And by the way, I have to put them into companies that have sustainability programs because this degree is all about sustainable development, right? And training science graduates to support Sri Lankan industry that has a sustainability program, and they obviously need to improve on it. These net zero, race to zero, all that stuff, right? Yeah. And if they want to stay competitive in the global market with their services or products, they have to follow certain sustainable development goals, right? So, I mean, it's my personal contacts that is basically running the, keeping this going. That's not the way to go. Okay. I mean,
it's not Nimali, you're right, but I think the same happens the world over. So even we do the same. You're ringing around people that you know, trying to find placements, or in some instances we say to the students, you go find your placement, which is quite hard as well.
Yeah, but Julie, see, that's something I don't want my students to do, because I've noticed when they go and find placements, they end up being, how do I say, less quality than I would desire, right? Yeah. And I'm the director for Center for Quality Assurance. I can't afford my students to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay, I don't want to sound grand, but you know.
No, absolutely. It will impact their employability at the end of the day. You're right. And when you say, if they do go find their own placements, do you audit those placements? So do you go out and visit them? How does it work?
Well, even if they find it, and of course, I look at it carefully, talk to the people who they've contacted, right? And then decide whether it's suitable or not, right? If it's not, obviously, I say, no, you can't do this, right? Yes, there is, by the way, these courses are all formally assessed, right? They carry marks that contribute to the final grade and the class, as you know, right, of their final degree. So they are formally audited, not just audited, they are very closely monitored, right? We have progress review meetings, and we keep on telling, there's an industry course supervisor who is a member of the, like the industrial training and the industrial research project. Those details we can go. Chamini, since NITA is helping you, which is very different to the model that we follow in the Faculty of Science. And Rupika or Professor Heva Gamage, how do you place your students, Professor Heva Gamage? Is there a separate unit?
Yes, in my faculty, there is a separate unit called Professional Development Center, PDC. It's the center which is formally established to maintain the links with the industry partners, especially the people who are providing the job opportunities, as well as the people who could provide the different support services for the academic program. And PDC usually place all our students, and the placement is in a kind of an academic activity. And we have a process where we have established, if I briefly say, it's in our degree program in the third year, second semester, after 2.5 years of a study at the university, it is a compulsory requirement for all students to go to get in a 6 months industry placement. In the industry placement, they will get a chance to really learn how things, or not learn, I mean, they will be exposed as well as take part in an actual industry context, where they will see and they will get an opportunity to apply the knowledge and skill they have learned during the first basically 5 semesters. And then the process is usually the people can make a submission saying what are their preferences, and then industries meantime send the opportunities available for the placement. Then the PDC do the matchmaking. So we have a kind of a program, and what we have seen, usually the students like to go top level companies which has a high reputation, because people think I mean, if they can get an industry placement in a very good company, there is a good chance for their future employability, and they will be some sort of an added qualification or added feature in their CVs. Therefore, that there is a high demand. Sometimes the demand is not normalized. However, we believe it depends on the skill as well as a kind of a good placement. I mean, the placements where they will get an opportunity to learn many things, not one thing. So that is doesn't depend on the company, and depends on the type of project in which they will be placed. However, this issue is also the other side. Industries prefer to always get the high rank GPA students. Their preference always go for that, but not for the low rank people. But during the last few years, we have explained both parties. The GPA doesn't show the real talent capability of a person. So sometimes the people with a low GPA could be a very good workers in the organization, and the industry seems to be have accepted. Therefore, we always would like to mix the people within a highly capable as well as those we are kind of an average performance. And the students who are very poor performance, we don't send them for the industry placement as in a policy. So there is a requirement for a student side, they will have to achieve some level of performance in order to be placed in our organization. So we undertake the responsibility of putting in a placement, and PDC is in a very successful. We have a higher demand than what we have it. Every year, 350 students are placed in the different companies, including some foreign companies. Now we have a request from the several foreign companies, and some students are placed in foreign companies. They fund those students to go for a 6 months there. During the pandemic season, we had a kind of a problem because this work from home culture has become a part of our life now, and therefore many software companies they practice the work from home. Therefore, the students didn't get a good exposure into the real working environment. They were doing the projects from home. So I think it's a kind of a small setback because it's not doing the work. They need to, the physical context, it's quite different. However, things may change now again. And that's overall current status, Professor Nirmali, as well as the others.
Okay, thank you. It's certainly interesting. For us all, I think, with the pandemic and this working from home, and it's even harder when, of course, it's not just students, it's new staff as well that start. You're right, it's not an easy. Jenny, I'm going to hand over to you if you want to pick some of the questions up in terms of working with industry. That would be great. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I was actually just going to ask, following on from the comments there, how willing do you find the industry are to work with yourselves and students? Are they quite keen, or do they need a little bit of persuasion? Is it you sort of going out to them?
At the beginning, because my degree started only in 2017, right? I used to be like a traditional scientist, and then, started this industry themed degree. They didn't know what to expect. So the industry was quite hesitant, but no more, right? They actually seek out, students saying we have this internship position. Of course, I can't just place them whenever they want, right? I mean, there's a timetable according to which I have to work. Right now, I don't see an issue. Thank you. Others, please.
Yes, thank you, madam. Actually, I'm representing the Faculty of Law. In our faculty, when we are placing our internships, we have a collaboration with certain the stakeholders, and we have a good collaboration with the Alumni Association and also the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, and the leading law firms, and also the certain the banks, the legal officers are working. So therefore, actually our Alumni Association, they helped us a lot, and the many students they are working under the senior practitioners, and some of the students, they are working under the leading law firms and NGOs, and actually some of the students, they are receiving wonderful opportunities, certain international organizations such as ICRC and also the UN. But those opportunities are very less actually. Very few students are receiving this kind of opportunities. However, I mean that the placing students to their internships, it's quite successful. But the problem that we are facing in our faculty is within this current curricula, even though this is a mandatory requirement, this component has not incorporated as a credit course, so like a subject. So therefore, we don't have a proper strategy to evaluate the quality of the internship. So actually, one of the main objective of my participation, get an insights about how to evaluate the quality of the internship, because like it's very difficult to assure the unique quality. We don't know what kind of the practice or the experience that they are gaining. But actually now in these days, we are in the process of revising our curriculum. So in our new curriculum, the faculty has taken a decision to incorporate this internship as a 4-credit course. So therefore, now we are planning at least to have 2 types of assessment strategies to evaluate the quality of the internship program. That is the main problem currently we are facing, but in future we are planning to overcome this problem. So actually I wanted to get an insight how to evaluate the quality of the internship. So that's why I mainly participated for this discussion.
Excellent. That's really good to know. Thank you.
It is, and that I suppose that's the follow-up bit. Once we've gathered the information, we can start and prepare the workshops on how we actually help and support that process, because auditing and the actual assessment of the placement is crucial, as you say, and it's about being fair and equitable to everybody, isn't it, when everyone's on a different placement. So really interesting to hear that. Thank you. Sorry, Jenny.
Excuse me, I'm from the Faculty of Technology. So actually, as I've previously mentioned, we just recently started actually. So I would like to give a small introduction about the degree programs. We have 4 degree programs. That is a Bachelor of Biosystems Technology in Agriculture, Bachelor of Biosystems Technology in Environmental Technology, Bachelor of Engineering Technology in Instrumentation and Automation, and Information and Communication Technology. So all these degree programs are 4-year degree programs and professional degree programs, and all the 4 degree programs seek accreditation. And this industrial training component is a mandatory component for all the students for all the degrees. And at present, actually, we have a collaboration with NITA, and there's a special division which deals with the university internship. So we have a collaboration with them, and we place our students in public as well as private institutions. So we have a mandatory component termed as industrial training, and it's 6-credit course, and we allow them to work there for 6 months. So the assessment criteria is also done in collaboration with NITA. So it has already been developed. So now actually in these days, 28th, 29th and 30th, we have our assessments.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. It's quite interesting to hear that a number of the degree programs you're running are quite new. Or you're just been going through a process of revalidating them. And obviously the placements are very important to what you do. But I just wondered, just to move away from that just for a short time, do you work with industry in any other ways? I'm just wondering, maybe when you're developing your ideas for programs, do you do any consultation perhaps in terms of what industry you're looking for? And do you bring industry into other parts of teaching and learning, maybe
Yes.
guest lectures, etc.?
Yes, actually, we have an industrial consultative committee. So this committee gathers 3 months by 3 months. We have discussions and we get their recommendations, their suggestions, and actually in the revisions, we incorporate their suggestions as well. And also our curriculum has been revised to cater the needs of the industry as well as the society. So because this is like more, we produce technologists, technology graduates. So it is more like practical oriented. So we have incorporated these practical components as well. And all these things are based on these the industry consultative committee recommendations and other consultants' suggestions and recommendations and the market needs.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. What about in other areas? Would anybody like to add anything else to that if you take a similar approach, or anything else that you do?
Yes, I put a comment on chat, Jenny.
Oh, thank
yes,
you, Namali. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of outside teachers, because that's exactly what it is about, right? Because I mean, we academics don't have that industry experience, right? So obviously they have to come in and teach, but of course they have to meet the university standards, for examination, teaching, all that. But there's one thing, I don't know whether Professor Hewagamage, you encounter this or the others do, right? Yeah, of course, Janet, through personal contacts, of course. That's what do you think, right? Now, even though my faculty has initiated this kind of a slew of industry-themed degrees, right? That mine is not the only one. There's one in chemistry. There are two in the Department of Statistics, and there's one in mathematics, etc. There are some policy level changes that need to be taken up at the UGC level, right? I'll come to that. I'm saying this because I'm director CQA. Now, the faculties have taken up, okay, we need to train our students to go to become not just research scientists and academics, but also to go and work in industry, right? I'm talking about a traditional science faculty that's been modeled on the British system, right? And now it changed over the past 10 years. But still, there are many academics, including some who hold very important administrative positions, who say, oh, we should be having only degrees that can be taught entirely by the faculty staff. And I just get so mad, right? I mean, why are you talking as if you've just woken up, after a deep slumber of about 50 years, right? And just saying that, we need to run courses. Now, that's a big issue. I'm going to raise this at the UGC level, right? I'm going to raise this because on the one hand, the UGC keeps on saying, increase the employability, we need the private sector, they are the engine of growth, etc., like some mantra, And then when the universities have actually moved away into that, the traditional sort of, faculties, not the IT or the technology, which are anyway, in that sort of professionally oriented areas, then they say, oh, we have to justify the salaries of the teachers. We only need to, oh my goodness, right? I'm senior enough to be rude even to the dean of my faculty. So that's okay.
Oh, that's brilliant. Can I kind of follow up on that then? Because you mentioned in the area of computing, you have a sort of professional centre there that works specifically with industry. But then in other areas, normally like yours, it seems that it's much more about your personal contacts. So within this sort of institution, what level of support is there for working with industry and actually building these relationships? Because it is a big job and it takes a lot of time. But it seems like in some faculties, there's lots of support, but in others, it's more left to the individual academics, perhaps.
I'm being diplomatic here. I don't get any support.
That's very diplomatic, Namali.
You're very diplomatic, Namali, but we get the message that there should be, and I think it's true, even across our institution, there's different levels of support for different programs. So if I look at my nursing team, they have a whole placement team that look after the placements for the students, because they're going out 3 times a year for 3 years. So they look after that for the academic staff. Yeah, if I look at my applied bioscience and zoology program, that's down to the academic to find those placements and support. So it is very, very challenging, you're right. And it would be nice to have something that works across a whole university, but yeah,
that's something that I thought, I hope will come out of this whole exercise with you guys, that I told my vice chancellor, listen, that this is not going to work well or sustain itself and also improve its quality unless we have a separate office or whatever, right, that deals with industry placements in a professional way. I learned that when I listened to the Apprenticeship UK series of webinars that were organized by the British Council. I was invited to listen in on, and that's where I got this whole idea, right? So, yeah. I mean, it's just a very piecemeal approach. It's not piecemeal. I can see that in the IT, the University of Columbus School of Computing, and also in the technology. But I don't think it is so in other faculties, including mine. Yeah.
And that's what makes it very hard, doesn't it? And in terms of getting the buy-in of your academic staff as well, because they'll think, well, why should I bother when somebody else is having it done for them? So it is cultural as well.
I agree.
Can I pick up on that as well? Because it's quite interesting. The research I've been doing has been across the UK, and it's been very different in terms of the levels of support, exactly like you're saying there. But I just wonder if, do you have any, maybe at a university level, do you have things like career services on top of that? We have at UWS, for example, we have a career service who work across the whole university to support students, and they don't find them placements, but they will help with kind of employability skills, CV development, interview technique, these kind of things. Would you have, is that something you would have in Sri Lanka at all?
Yes, there are career guidance units in every faculty, right? They do help with, enhancing skills, but I'm afraid when it comes to now, okay, there's something that's a difference. Now, the career guidance unit also places students of my faculty of science in internships, right? But the internships or the industrial placement that I'm talking about are part of the formal academic program. Okay, and I monitor them closely. I explained all that, right? Now, the career guidance unit does, it helps them to find, internships and industrial placement, but they don't monitor them well. And, if again, let's say the quality of that process is far less than what I would expect. And I do not devolve my internships and industrial placements to the career guidance unit for exactly that reason. Because my students are fewer in number, but I really manage them, if I may put it that way, far more tightly, right? And I engage with the industry professionals one-to-one, right? I don't just leave the students to do what they want and then come back and write some report.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because at my first university that I worked in the UK, we didn't have industrial placement, but we actually embedded what was a national training program into the curriculum, so that the students were, in effect, ready to hit the workplace and then weren't required to attend a 12-week, between a 9 and a 12-week national training program within the UK. And employers thought that was great, because they could then just engage one of our graduates and work with that graduate for a week to bring them up to speed on their local paperwork, because we had a national type of paperwork that we utilised, and within a week they were hitting the ground running and going out and doing the work that they were employed to do. So it's really interesting, isn't it, how you engage with industry as to how relevant it can be, and whether there actually is a need in some instances for an industrial placement. And I suppose these industrial consultative committees are really interesting, because if you get it right, the placement time or the industrial experience could be reduced. You've talked about 4 and 6 credits this morning, but if the actual programme content mirrored something within industry that was a national industry that everybody could agree with, then industrial placements might become less challenging.
Yes, and I just need to say this also. Something that I hope that will eventually merge is that no matter which faculty or which, whatever does the industrial placement, that we would be able to develop through this British Council support a course that is internationally benchmarked. That will be a real plus point, right? Because it does not matter whether you do law or science or whatever, right? But your industry placement meets international standards. That I really, really hope is something that will finally emerge from, all these discussions that, we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Namali. That's a really interesting point, actually, that you raised, because, yeah, it would be hugely beneficial for everybody. Ourselves included.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Because today in the morning, because I'm director CQA, I have sort of discussions with other people who are very important at the UGC quality assurance level. And one of them, I was talking to him today and I said, look, I'm going to have this meeting with the British Council and the UWS team today. And I said, this is what I want in the end. He said, that will be really great because it will be a real help for the entire state university system. If you come up with, such a, of course, it's a little, we need to really work towards it, but I really hope we can.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. I think we've kind of touched on this throughout, but I think maybe just so we can sort of tie this up, like, could you guys give me an indication of like what you think are the benefits that working with industry within your programs, what benefits does this really bring to your students?
I'm doing all the talking. I think I should let the others talk. Please go ahead.
If somebody doesn't want to talk, it's okay, put it in the chat. What do you think the benefits are of working with industry? Obviously, if you're struggling with IT today, don't worry, and you think you can save your battery power by putting it in the chat, please do that. I think, there are huge benefits and you have discussed those. But then if we turn it on its head, what are the downsides?
Downsides are finding suitable companies and people who are willing to give their time and effort, particularly at challenging economic times such as this, because companies obviously have to look after, their profits and their employees and et cetera, right? So that obviously is a very challenging thing. I mean, yes, they welcome free pairs of hands that come and work, but remember, they also need to invest then their time and in order, right? And I mean, these students are not some kind of slaves, right? I mean, they are university students and they need to be given proper guidance and they need to be treated with respect. They're not some, you know what I mean, right?
You've just answered one question, Namali, that I was going to ask, and I was going to ask whether students paid for their placement, but that's a free pair of hands, so I'm presuming not. Is that the same in computing and in law? Do your students, is it an unpaid internship?
Some pay, some companies are willing to pay a small sum of money, some don't, but I don't know about the others. Why don't you please? Yeah.
That makes that really difficult. If you've got some paid placements and some unpaid placements, that makes it really difficult and competitive with your students, doesn't it? That makes it even harder.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Rupika, you said yes, so yours are paid? Or is that, yours are paid yet? Wow, okay.
Yes,
we are all IT people.
Law faculty, actually most of the times it's not paid for interns. For apprenticeship, of course, they paid, but for interns, most of the time they are not paying. But it depends on the corporate firm. So sometimes certain non-governmental organizations and some banks, they are paying a very little amount of money, but again, it depends. Most of the times, those internships are not paid.
Does that cause any issues with your students at all if they're doing unpaid placements? Because I know in my subject area, I struggle to get students sometimes to, we don't have a built-in placement, but I would struggle to get students sometimes to take on roles like that just purely because they can't afford to do it.
Yes, actually final year students, because in our faculty from second year onwards, they can engage with these internship programs. Most of the times final year students, they are finding these paid places, but of course second year and third year students, there's no that kind of trend. Actually what they want to learn something. So therefore second year and third year students, there's no such trend and they are not every time finding this the paid places, but final year students, they are more willing to attach with paid the institutions, so corporations. So as a result of that, many students, they are not willing to engage with the practitioners and the senior lawyers, and they are trying to find certain institutions such as leading law firms, banks, and other the financial institutions, then the other the corporate institutions like that. So that trend is very much relevant to final year students.
If they're not paid placements and a student opts not to go on placement, can they still finish their degree when it's worth credit?
No, they have to.
They have to. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Can I ask if ever the placements, we've talked a lot about 6-month placements, are there ever shorter periods of time? So for example, they might go for just a week or a day. If it's lower years, the second and the third years, you mentioned they're less likely to engage because they're unlikely to get paid work and they couldn't take on 6 months unpaid. Is it likely that they might get something that's more like work experience than an internship or a kind of industry insight? Does that ever happen?
Well, not in mine, but there are many industry interactions we have, such as webinars, they do group projects. So, I mean, like by the way, this honors degree starts in the science faculty from the 3rd year onwards, because the 1st and 2nd years are common to everybody. Either they have a biological sciences stream or a physical sciences stream. And then in the 3rd, 4th years, they have their specialization, which is what I'm talking about. So no, they don't. And I'm only talking about the final year industry placements, because we don't have industry placements for people in the 3rd or other years, like in the law faculty. But plenty of industry interaction throughout their course. That's the way it is designed.
Brilliant, that's really positive to hear. And I see Normally you've put a comment in the chat saying that students will quite often take on kind of placements and experience because they recognise the value of it. So that's really encouraging, you know, that students kind of recognise that as well, which is wonderful. Let me just.
So I'm going to jump in, Jenny. What do you think are your barriers? What's stopping you, or what's stopping your students get additional placements or it be devolved down to the lower years?
Actually, from Faculty of Technology, we had some bad experiences with regard to this, because if I comment on the paid, unpaid jobs, some of the students are paid, but some of the students are not paid, and especially the students who are engaged in state sector, they are not paid. But in the private sector, some companies are willing to pay, but some do not. But based on the experience they gain, they just disregard it and they just work. But the problem was that when we assigned the students to these industrial placements, sometimes the work that they expect are not up to that standard, and sometimes there are no trainers to train them, and also sometimes the work is not that directly relevant. So in those occasions we had to change the placements and the initial level, because this is also our first time, so it was like a bit difficult for us to adapt to that, because we have around 500 students in our batch, so all of them should be placed in industries. So and also since it's technology, we have to find that relevant courses as well. So those are some of the bad experiences that we had to face.
And can I just ask then, because your placements are NAITA supports you finding the placements, so had you interacted with the placement providers before the students went out, or was it only once the students were in placement that you had discussions, or the students said it wasn't appropriate what they were covering?
Yes, actually, this process was some kind of affected with this COVID pandemic. So we wanted to initially have the collaborations initially with the NAITA, but because of this pandemic situation, we couldn't actually allow the students come to the main city and engage in the recommended places. So that was the problem. Because of that, there are some, that at that time it was very severe. So we asked them to find the places from their hometowns, actually, based on that condition. So in that sense, and also in the reputed institutions also, sometimes when we place them at that particular division, they don't have relevant work to do. So they say that this work is not enough for me and the experience is not sufficient likewise. So then we have to collaborate with, we have to have discussions with NITA, and then we have to change the placement. So those things happened.
Yeah, on my part too, I've had to, okay, I'm dealing with a much smaller number of students who I have to place, but I basically have to deal it into the heads of the company, person that I'm dealing with, and say, this is what I want, right? Because they may say, yes, we have a sustainability program, but it's all about, measuring how much water we use, and that rubbish, right? That's not what I'm thinking about. So, yeah. So, I mean, in the end, they all come round. I mean, there are some very leading companies, with engineers, et cetera, who very enthusiastically bought into this. And, it's very nice. But honestly, it's a lot of work on my part because there is no system for that, right?
Yeah, it is a lot of work. You're right.
I think as well, I don't know if you found this, but it's almost like, I think once you've got a placement established, do you find you go back to the same companies year on year? Because I think that's always easier once you've maybe worked with the company a couple of times and you've got a placement up and running. That's a little bit easier, but I think the time is actually in establishing the relationship and the placement.
Yes, I do, Jenny, but it is only if the experience has been satisfactory, right? Mm-hmm. Because I had to place some students last year in the 2020 when we all jumped into the COVID, situation, and some were not satisfactory. So I'm not going back to them at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So you've kind of mentioned already, you do a huge amount of work with industry. Is there anything else that you would like to do working with industry that you don't currently do because you don't have the resource or the support to do so?
Yeah, certainly. I would really like there to be a far better engagement, and that they recognize, I mean, even now, those who recognize the skills, the abilities that my students bring. Remember, I think this does not apply to the IT industry. There's a general perception about state university graduates saying, oh, they're unemployable. I mean, it really annoys me, right? Because these are students who've come through the toughest examination that I've ever faced in my life, the advanced level examination to get into university, right? And they're not fools, right? They just need, obviously, some training to go and work, with private sector. And they're not just because, okay, let me put it this way. Remember, you will laugh at this, right? English is obviously very important. The ability to communicate in English, in the English language, is extremely important to be successful, right? In the private sector in this country, and even in the state sector, I would think. So now most of the students who come into many of them, not most, would come from rural schools, right? They haven't been to the elite urban schools that produce, and you know what I mean, right? People who speak English very easily and whose family backgrounds enable them, to pick up the English language, and who speak with the right accent. Now you laugh when I say this, right? Because I'm talking about the social, attitudes of our society. Just because they don't speak with a posh accent or, that does not mean that they're incapable. Okay. But this industry placement has opened the eyes of very many companies who never even would have considered employing graduates, and just sort of brushing them off and saying, oh, they're unemployable, they can't do this, they can't do that. Many of them have actually praised them, right? But that barrier needs to be broken. Every time I have to work with a new company, particularly a leading company, right? But the ones with whom I've already worked, they're okay. not I mean the students I've worked with. Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's interesting. Sorry, Julie, I can see you're going to ask a question when you go.
I was just going to ask, so Namali, you've talked and we've discussed that there's support across the institution in various forms, or not, as the case may be, in finding these placements. But does the government, does UGC support you in any way in this? So are they making introductions at a national level? I mean, you've got the Newport City, for example. Are they introducing you to companies that are going in to help you gain placements, to help your students get attracted to potentially new jobs? Is there any support at government level? Deathly silence.
No. So right, I was hoping, Julie, that now that you guys wrote to the UGC and said you are going to do this, that you are going to tell them exactly that, right? Because the UGC definitely needs to get in on the act. And very interesting that you talk about the Port City, right? Now, here I am running behind my contacts in the Securities and Exchange Commission and trying to get at the Port City, big wigs, trying to get my students' placements in there. Okay.
Well, that would make a fantastic opportunity, because all of those companies should be thinking about sustainability, Namali, shouldn't they?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, no, the UGC does, if I may put it,
okay,
sweet nothing.
So they just tell you you need to increase it, but there's no support from them at all. Okay, that's interesting.
Exactly. Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
We are meeting them next week. So we're actually speaking to all the universities first, and then speaking to them. So obviously we have to be careful how we handle that conversation. And it's a new contact to us, but we're certainly taking everything on board. And when it comes to writing our report, we'll be very open in the feedback that we give. The in-person meeting, again, is more about information gathering and trying to be neutral, but we certainly will take on board what you're saying. And I don't think it's a problem that is unknown.
Well, Janet, I'm going to write, but I told you just now through a different mode of communication in a memo that I have to send about quality assurance. So I'm going to say this anyway, right?
Yes, well, I think it needs to be reinforced by as many angles as possible, and we could well find it. We've obviously spoken to yourselves before, and we've done a fair bit of work with Colombo over the last year or two. I think other universities are not going to have as much in place that they've managed to establish themselves, and so that's also really important to highlight, that if you're further away from the capital, if you're further away from support, you might not have those personal networks to make industry engagement effective. You might not have the finances, you might not have students that are able to attend. And so this is all the things we're trying to explore and get down on paper. And I think it's absolutely critical that it's communicated in as many ways as possible.
I think that's really interesting. It echoes a lot of the findings from my research in the events area, because obviously it's quite a new industry and a new academic area. And a lot of the kind of findings are pointing towards the role of us as academics working with the professional associations and organisations and governmental organisations and industry to really work together to kind of raise the profile of the work we do. So it's really interesting to see that your experiences actually are reflective of that. So that's great. Julie, I don't think I've got any more questions. I don't know if you had any.
I was just going to ask around, how else would you want to work with industry? I know we touched on it. Jenny asked that type of question earlier, but I'm just thinking around, would it be beneficial if you had some of the conferences that were held at the university, so that you're bringing in international as well as national visitors into the university, and conferences are run at the university? Would that be beneficial for you in terms of creating the industry links? How else would you want to link in with industry to help you and help your students?
Industry could actually provide, I don't know what to call it, not endowments, that's not the right term, but they could support through financial or other means to get to improve the industry academia linkage. There are many ways that they can do that. right? Right now, they are just the beneficiaries of this free education system. And as Professor Heva Gamage pointed out, remember, Sri Lanka is not a rich country, but we have tertiary education that is publicly funded, right? Okay. Students don't have to pay tuition fees, right? Remember, that's a luxury in this day and age, particularly when we are struggling economically. Yeah.
It is a huge luxury, because there's certain parts of the UK that students are paying a lot of money. And I've got, has anybody got any other comments around how they would want to work with industry? Is there anybody else that wants to come in?
Yes,
yep.
Actually, I'm from technology. Actually, since our degree programs, all the degree programs are accredited, so there's an accreditation requirement that the final year research projects are also should be industry based. So what we are thinking is, now when we place the students in for the internship programs, if there's a possibility that we can continue it for the final year research project also, that would be beneficial. So in this time also we attempted that and we succeeded up to a certain level. But if it can be, continued, or if the other, because sometimes these industries do not have the proper facilities to facilitate this research work. So then there's a problem with that. So that we have to find another place or some industry based project in the lab we have to do. So this is from our side, from our technology degree programs, that is one of the necessities that we want.
Okay, thank you. And is there interest for your, and I know Namali, you were interested in the Turing scheme. Is there interest from your students to go and work overseas? Industrial placements is possible through Turing, but it's very hard. I know I have a student out in the US at the minute, and she's doing some credits of learning through courses, but she's hoping that some credits, she might be able to get some credits through placement, but that's a little bit harder. But is there interest in your students to go overseas?
Certainly, they would jump at it because that will vastly increase their credentials, right? Actually, I brought this up because my Vice Chancellor at a meeting last week told me, because they've been addressed by your, I'm not sure, is it the chairman of the UGC or is it the minister in charge of education, somebody very important in the UK higher education system, had addressed the Sri Lankan vice chancellors. And I think, Sajiva, if you're here, you ought to know what it was all about. But he told me, oh, I'm sorry, my dog. My dog is barking at something on the roof. Huh? Right.
It's all right. It's normally my dog that barks, Namali.
She just can't stand other birds on the roof. Yeah, okay. And she said that that they've been told about this Turing scholarship, and that perhaps we could explore that. I mean, I know it was just a long shot. I just said this because she asked me to, and I thought, yes. I looked at the website also, and let's see. I mean, we have things to do.
I don't think anything's ever a long shot. I think it's always nice to have ambition to achieve something and then see what's possible. I think it is important to highlight that it can be really hard to find placements internationally, but the Turing scheme, as far as I understand it, can also be used for academic exchange, and there it might be far easier to start something.
Well, Janet, I was just thinking, I mean, would it be, I mean, I'm talking about sustainability programs, right? I mean, there are very interesting things going on in Sri Lanka because we are a biodiversity hotspot, and, we have like stuff more like environment oriented. I was just thinking, could we, try to see whether there might be some British students who might be interested in coming and spending, I don't know, 2 months in Sri Lanka working on a sustainability
Julia
program.
and I were just talking about this on Friday, about opportunities for British students as well.
Yes. I mean, that's what I was actually thinking about, right?
Okay.
University of Colombo could, host them in the sense that make the arrangements, but we use the scholarship money for them to come and work, on conservation programs and, like, net zero, that kind of stuff, carbon reduction. Yeah.
Absolutely. But Turing is very much a two-way process. So it is about how many students go in and out of a partnership. So we would certainly be, it's something that we can explore at another date with the Turing scheme, because we have signed up to it as an institution.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't think I have any questions. Janet, anything else that you want to pick up?
No, at this point. I think if we go through the slides that we have, then it might stimulate some more questions and ideas. Let me pick it back up.
And then I know Namali, I think towards the end, wants to come in with some bits as well, doesn't she, Janet? From
yes.
Yeah, I know. See, because of this power situation, I think the lights came on just back on, but that document I can share with you guys. That was merely to highlight what needs to be done for this industrial placement, because they've done a similar sort of a thing for the industry research, their research project. So this conversation I had today in the morning was about that. And, I was told today, when you talk with the British Council and the UWS team, the UWS team today, why don't you try to see whether you can develop a document like this? Sort of a guideline for industry placements as well. That will be very useful. I can send that document across for you guys to see later on, right? Okay.
That would be fantastic. Jenny, will I hand over to you guys to discuss through these slides, and then I can flick as needed.
Yeah, I can't see the slides just yet, Janet.
Oh, so. Okay, 1 second.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay.
Come up now. Thank you so much. So I suppose probably a lot of what we maybe have on the slides, these are maybe things we might pick up on, I guess, a little bit more when it comes to the actual workshops that we're going to be delivering. But just in terms of research that we've done here in the UK, in terms of how you can embed industry within the curriculum, what we've kind of identified, there's 4 different ways that we can go about doing this. So first of all, we can embed actually within our teaching and learning, and it does sound as if you guys are doing a little bit of that already. It sounds like Colombo are fairly sort of progressive in terms of your work with industry, which is encouraging to hear. But we can embed internally. Obviously, we can also look at doing work external within an industry setting, which seems from what you've said today to be almost the most common way that you work with industry within your teaching through those industrial placements. But as we can see, there's lots of different ways that we can do those placements. It seems that you guys are quite set in how you do it, but lots of universities do deliver these in different ways. We also have something that's quite common in the area that I work in, is we tend to offer our students lots of opportunities that we offer to them, but they're kind of extracurricular. They're things that they don't have to do, but that we would hope that they would choose to participate in because they recognise the benefits of doing so. And then finally, we have external activities led by industry, which I think Janet is going to pick up on a little bit more, given her role that she's now working with on Entrepreneurial Scotland, which is very exciting. So in terms of embedding within teaching and learning, again, I'm quite sure these are things that you will all be familiar with based on what you've said. It does sound like you are very much engaged with industry. So at a really basic level, I think bringing in guest lecturers is an important way, to sort of, sorry, I'm forgetting the word. I've not had a coffee yet, and it's still early here in Scotland. To kind of get students to engage with industry practitioners. So obviously that can be normally, as you mentioned, it can be actually bringing in people to perhaps teach, for certain modules and certain courses, or it can just be, bringing people in to do a guest talk for your students. One of the things that I do quite a lot in my subject area, because the events industry is so vast and diverse, I find a lot of my students, they don't fully appreciate all of the different career options that are available to them. So I will quite often bring in former students or graduates who are out working in the industry. And we find that's quite successful because it allows the current students to understand the different opportunities that are available to them, but also it really helps to kind of highlight to the students the importance of their university degree as well, in the different areas that they need to focus on. So I guess that's a fairly simple kind of way, but again, it does rely on you having those industry contacts. So perhaps there's, again, some more work to be done there around how we build those networks so that they're not overly reliant on particular individuals within the faculty having those contacts, because it sounds like normally if you were to leave your university and go elsewhere, you take all those contacts with you. So that's a potential issue in terms of the kind of sustainability. We also do, and again, I'm sure you will also do, things like site visits and field trips. So my colleague Sandro, for example, previously ran a learning journey, which was a week-long field trip where he would take students down to London. Again, obviously London, very big for tourism and events. Oh, fabulous, Normali, I see you're interested in tourism relating. Excellent, we'll come back to you on that. Fabulous. My colleague Sandro is just the person, he's good on that side of things. So we can have the kind of the more long-term learning journeys, which could potentially be something of interest to your students. In a previous role that I had at another institution, we would take our students on a week-long international learning journey where we would actually go over to Finland and work over there around actually the area of sustainable tourism, Normally, which was very interesting over there. So it can be, again, those very structured, those very formal links with industry, or also very simple site visits, you know, out to actually see companies in operation and speak with some of the staff there. So again, that's fairly straightforward. One of the areas that I'm particularly interested in, and I think works quite well, is integrating industry into assessments that you're running within the classroom setting. We do find here at University of West of Scotland, we have quite a diverse student population. So as I mentioned, it's not always necessarily feasible for our students to go out on those longer term placements. So this is a good way of bringing industry into the classroom and to those students who don't have those opportunities. So we, for example, we have a module, it's called Tourism and Event Service Learning, that is essentially a consultancy-based module. So as the assessment for that, similar to what you guys were talking about, but kind of slightly shorter term, where students work on a problem for an industry partner. And that's, again, a good way to engage them with industry, but also to help them develop those professional skills and the communication, the confidence, all those soft skills that we were talking about before. So we partner with a number of different organisations in that way. I don't know if we can move on to the next slide, please, Janet, would be lovely. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, again, we can do things externally, but within an industry setting. So other things that we do, for example, that I found, and this isn't all from UWS, I should say, this is from the research that I've been doing across the UK. So we can do things like we have masterclasses, and that was something that came up in the research that I was doing, where you know, perhaps yourselves as the faculty, or sometimes this would be done by your careers department, would set up these kind of master classes, which are essentially, I suppose, guest talks, but maybe things like panel discussions that would really focus on a particular area of the industry, and, you know, inviting speakers in to do those kind of things. Career hubs was something that was quite interesting that came up, where again it was almost like delivered by the career service. So for example, it could be, you know, really focusing on gaining employment in a certain area, or developing, enhancing your CV, those types of things. That was quite interesting. We also try to engage with, and again, this is something I think that Janet had mentioned earlier, the kind of involvement with conferences and professional associations, you know, getting our students out, working with them, you know, whether that is through attending perhaps conferences that they are, or training sessions that they're putting on, or looking at those more formalised accreditation schemes is another thing. So we have quite a strong partnership with the Association of British Professional Conference Organisers, and just by having that relationship allows us, you know, to develop our network and bring in additional partners, and you know, who they may then have, you know, so basically the kind of professional associations and ourselves are able to work together really to raise the profile of education in our area, and that then helps us perhaps to build some of those relationships that then allows us you know, to make those, you know, placement connections and work experience and everything else. Industry mentors is another interesting area. We do have a scheme at UWS. Now that is something that is done at a university level, where students can apply to be part of this scheme in the final year of their degree programme, and they are then partnered up with a mentor in their kind of chosen area. As I say, that's something that's done at university level, but again, through my research, I have found that that's something that a lot of places do within their kind of faculties, within particular programmes. And again, I think that's probably something that does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work to set up, but can be hugely beneficial to the students. Now, that's not something that's offered to all students. I think in all the cases that I came across, it's been something that students apply to do, because obviously it does take a lot of work, and I suppose in the nicest possible way, you probably only want your very best or most engaged students you know, participating in that. And that tends to be something that maybe runs throughout the final year of a student's studies. And as I say, they're partnered up with somebody from industry who just acts as an industry mentor to them, really helping them to make connections, to gain the skills that they need, and make those introductions you know, within the industry. So that's something that I think personally I'm quite interested in. You know, it's definitely a good development opportunity for students, but as I say, you know, the time and commitment that needs is something that, you know, needs to be resourced, I think it would be safe to say. And of course, we see that kind of preparation for employment, the going out and working with industry is hugely important, as you guys have all recognised. And if we could maybe just go on quickly to the next slide, Janet, thank you. I'm just thinking these, I think we've got these headings mixed up. I think the previous slide should have been internally by extracurricular, and then this one should be within industry. I've just realised, Janet, that was probably me who put them on the wrong slide, so I'll mix that up. So as you guys have mentioned, obviously the kind of industrial placement is very important to what you do, and it's fabulous that you have that embedded within your programmes. And again, what I've kind of found from my research across the UK is that approaches to students going out to working with industry is very, very mixed in terms of how that's done, you know, across different institutions, across different subject areas. I mean, it seems within your institution that industrial placement is particularly important, which is fantastic. And you'll see on the slide here, what I found is that really the approaches to work placement can vary very considerably. Something that we find particularly down in England, here in the UK, a lot of students will go on a sandwich year. So rather than going for that kind of one term, they go for a full year out in industry. And that's something which is hugely beneficial to the student, both in terms of their employability, and evidence suggests that when the students return from that year, their academic performance is much improved as well. So that's something that I think a lot of universities here in the UK are keen to support. But again, the logistics of it can be problematic. I think most of the institutions that offer that sandwich year would have the support of a placement team and a placement office. We find here in Scotland, we have the 4-year degrees, the same as you. And so we find that something that's a little bit more difficult to deliver. In England, usually the students would go out between the 2nd and 3rd year. Whereas I suppose if we were to do it up here, it would almost probably, or if you were to bring that in, it would almost be in place perhaps of maybe the 3rd year of the study. So that's something that's maybe a little bit more problematic. We do also see the kind of shorter term placements. So like you guys have suggested, that could be anything from a 6-month, 1-term placement. One of the universities that I spoke to, they did really short, sharp placements. So the students would go out for 1 week at a time, but they would do that several times throughout their degree. And that worked quite well for allowing them to work in lots of different companies and industries. What we also have that's very common in the area that I work in events in particular, we don't tend to do as many long-term placements as we have here, just because of the nature of our industry. So the students kind of tend to build up what we would call a portfolio of work experience. So again, that can be kind of longer term or shorter term. Sometimes just going to an event and volunteering on the day is another good option for the students. So that's another way for them to build their experience. But again, that will be relevant in some subject areas, but perhaps not so much in others. I don't imagine, law, that would be particularly helpful for example. And Normally, you've highlighted that your system doesn't allow for sandwich years, so that's quite interesting. It's something I think a lot of universities here are very keen on, but as I say, the practicalities of actually delivering it are a little bit more difficult. Now, although I say, our students, they don't always have sort of formalised placements, we do have ways sometimes, so it's not built into a module, but we do have ways of recognising that. So as we've got here, we have certain kind of modules that students can do, and also these achievement reports. So there's ways of recognising external work experience that the students put up on that isn't built into their degree, which I think is important, not just for their CV, but that they get some kind of credit in that sense. But I'll now pass over to Janet, because I think she's going to talk a little bit more about some of the externally led programmes that are available.
Yeah, so obviously one thing that we haven't specifically touched on in this session is the fact that actually in the UK and elsewhere in Europe as well, industry can be quite proactive in trying to attract top talent. They understand the need to get the best graduates through and to have graduates that are ready to go straight into employment. And as Julie mentioned with her field, to have the minimum of training once they're paid to then go on and hit the ground running with their entry-level graduate role. So there are quite a lot of independent activities that are led by industry in the UK. There are a huge number of business-led or organisation-led internship projects. So it could be a month, it could be a summer. Some cases it's unpaid and it's organised by the student, but in many cases, for example, the big banks such as Barclays, HSBC, they run an internship programme that students can apply to, as do the civil service in the UK. You can do a summer internship programme with them. Some of the big pharma companies, other big multinationals, so you can apply for a summer internship. I think, Jenny, you'd mentioned DF Concerts on here as well.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that was an organisation that we work with here. They're one of the big festival organisers, and I've actually worked with them to develop a placement programme that they now offer across a number of universities. So that was very much, as you say, driven actually by them coming to me saying this is something we would like to do.
Yeah, and
that's
encouraging. And that's the best case scenario, really, isn't it? When they realise that actually working with education providers is going to help them find exactly what they need and help the students understand exactly the skills that they'll need. There's also opportunities for work experience from school. At school level, we're expected to do, I think it's 2 weeks at the ages of 14 and 16, something like that, to go out, and that's nationally mandated. And sometimes it's industry that'll be offering that out, and you can go and apply to do that. And then obviously we have huge numbers of graduate and fast track application programs, which are very much attribute led. So you finish your degree, or you're in the final year of your degree, and you apply to go onto a graduate program. And we haven't really touched on whether that's something, any of these areas are something that happens specifically in Sri Lanka, where you wouldn't apply for a specific job in a specific place, but you would apply for a position at that level, and then they would place you, and you'd probably do a rotating set of internships or projects over a year or 2 years before you were finally offered a permanent position. I did that. Many of my colleagues undertook something similar. So we talked about tourism. Mine was with a multinational tourism company, and I did that later on in my 20s. It's really, really common. I now work for Entrepreneurial Scotland, and one of the programmes that we run is the Saltire Scholar Programme, which is an organisation university agnostic programme. We work with all universities across Scotland and working to offer
multinational placements for penultimate year students. So this is students who are either in their third year going into their fourth year, or their second year going into their third year, depending on how many years of study they're undertaking. They are 10 to 14 week placements over the summer. And in many ways, they're all completely standardized. So they're a similar sort of length. There's a similar sort of expectation of what they're going to do in terms of what they're expected to produce, what level of support the mentors are offered to, expected to provide to the students. There's a level of training for the student before they start. There's a level of training for the mentor in the organization before they start. And something that's really important is all of the placements are paid. So it's a very small amount, to be honest. It's somewhere between UK minimum wage and a kind of international stipend, because in that case, all of the accommodation and travel would be paid. But it is an amount for the student. It does then mean that any student from any background, any situation in Scotland is equally able to take it up and still have paid employment for the summer, which then offers opportunities for some of the students whose, for example, parents couldn't support them through that period of study. All of the students are assessed based on their attributes and their performance in the application process. So of the students that apply in the autumn, roughly 1/3 to 1/4 of them will actually be successful in getting a placement. But they're assessed on how they perform through the kind of problem solving process, through the interview process. It doesn't matter what grades they're getting. And that was really important, really interesting, mentioned about how depending on the level of the students' grades and how whether they were a poor or higher level achieving student, some students would or wouldn't be offered different types of placements. This takes into consideration actually that some students from some universities might be better at problem solving than others. Some might have had better opportunities to display some of the attributes that they have, or might be more or less skilled in their field. And obviously the disciplines are important, but not necessarily the driving factor towards the placement. And this is a model that is increasingly getting used in other places in the world as well. This idea of students applying for something and being assessed on their competencies, as Julie mentioned and Jenny mentioned, not on necessarily their grades. For graduate level employment, generally they wouldn't look at what university you came from or what score you got. There would be a minimum expectation, and then you would go through a similar set of competency-based tasks and interviews before you are finally offered a role. And I think that is probably us. Yes, so we're doing okay on time. We've got another 5 minutes. So are there any questions specifically at this point that anyone has? Is there anything that you would like us to clarify over email later, or anything else that you would like more information about?
Thank you very much, Julie, and everybody, Jenny and Janet and everybody. Thank you. Just to, in the interest of time, so we'll put together our document answering those questions as much as possible that you've sent in the email. Secondly, we then perhaps we need to know what might be the next step, because you said you were meeting UGC and maybe others over the coming weeks, right? Because I would really like, and others who are listening in, please, contribute. And I would really like to see a very, a valuable endpoint, like that international benchmark. Thing. Not through this immediately, but work towards that, and also the possibilities of exploring the chairing scholarship for benefit of both sides, if I may put it that way. Yeah. And so let's see how it evolves, because I'm really, really keen to bring some order and consistency. That means quality, obviously, right? Consistency of quality to the industrial training or industry placement process in the University of Colombo. Those who are willing to participate, we can't force anybody to participate. And, so that the way in which it is measured or monitored, evaluated, whatever the term may be, is consistent across disciplines, and that, it's a transparent process that is open to everybody, and also will attract the attention of Sri Lankan industry, and maybe, who knows, overseas industry as well, right?
Absolutely. And the British Council was quite prescriptive in what they asked us to do in this project. So when they put out the request for proposals, they wanted a very specific course of events, which was this information gathering going into a report, and then a set of training sessions around certain developmental needs that might come out across all of the universities in Sri Lanka. However, I think there's probably opportunity as well, if coming out of these sessions, actually what's needed isn't necessarily training, it is a sort of development of a framework or further discussions in that kind of area. That's absolutely something we can have conversations with them about. You know, as I said before, it's not a huge project that we've been taken on to conduct this time, but we're really hopeful that there'll be more funding forthcoming. That means that we can help to have more impact. But in the short term, if we need to kind of reshape slightly what organisations are asking of us, then absolutely, I think that's a possibility. Would you say, Julie?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is that we can share the Turing scheme, because it's any UK university that it's open to, and the same for any Sri Lankan institution. So we can certainly share some information on the Turing scheme, and we can put you in touch with our Turing lead at the university as well, if that would be helpful.
Thank you very much. That will be very, very useful. Very, very kind of you.
That's okay. No, I mean, these are all things that, you know, as we get talking, we get linked in. It's how can we support each other? Because I know I looked at, we had some funding that was then subsequently withdrawn, but we were going to send students out to work on a summer internship at the turtle farms down the coast. So, you know, there is certainly students would love the opportunity across a whole range of disciplines to come overseas, and I'm sure that it would be reciprocated from your students as well to come into the UK. So I think there's definitely things that we should explore.
Yes. So what happened to that funding? I know we had that conversation last time I met you, that disappeared, right?
Yeah, the funding at the university got taken away, which was a real shame. But otherwise we would have
there are many more such initiatives going on here. And by the way, there's going to be a group of Australian students who are going to come over and spend some time in Sri Lanka helping a research project that I do on water quality, right? That's going to happen towards the So who knows, we might be able to explore that, you know, we might be able to extend that to your students, I mean, towards the later part of this year, right?
Yeah, they would certainly, water quality would, you know, would be amazing, Namali. And, you know, there will be things across other faculties as well, in terms of where we go and what we do. So I know in business, there's probably in Jenny's faculty, there's probably students that would really want to come out and be involved on the tourism side, as well as on business. So and technology, you know, within the university, we have technology, we have IT. You know, if we were to put a call out, I'm sure there'd be things that we could definitely work on.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for dialing in, and we will certainly be in touch in the short term to progress this further. And we wait to hear the report